The air in Oak Haven Cemetery was a thick mix of damp earth and wilting lilies. Elara stood at the edge of the grave, one hand on her 7-month pregnancy, the other holding a cold umbrella. Her son, 10-year-old Leo, clung to her coat, a trembling anchor in her sea of grief. Whispers skittered from the small gathering. Such a tragedy. Liam was so young, one said. But you know his family, another returned, just loud enough for Elara to hear. She won't last a month without him. Across the dark soil stood the Devereaux. Her father-in-law, Alistair, his face a mask of indifference. Her sister-in-law, Beatrice, and brother-in-law, Julian, stood beside him, their designer mourning attire, looking like a costume. Their eyes were dry. Elara met their gaze not with hatred, but with weary resignation. They had never accepted her. Not when she married their golden son, and not when her business sense helped Liam transform their floundering family business, Petals and Promises, into a thriving enterprise. They certainly didn't accept her now. The final clod of earth struck, the coffin with a hollow thud. A chill crept up Elara's legs, but she ignored it. The will reading was next. She clung to the desperate hope that Liam had shielded them. Inside the lawyer's mahogany-paneled office, the air smelled of lemon polish and finality. She sat with Leo as Mr. Abernathy, the family solicitor, began to read. His voice was a sterile monotone. To my beloved wife, Elara Devereaux, I leave our home at 14 Chestnut Grove. All my controlling shares in Petals and Promises LLC and the 1972 panel van. A breath she hadn't realized she was holding escaped her lips. The house, the business, and yes, the old van Liam had been so attached to. A fragile sense of relief began to unfurl in her chest. It was instantly crushed by Beatrice's sharp, derisive laugh. Oh no. I'm afraid that's not how this is going to work, she said, exchanging a triumphant glance with her brother. Elara blinked. Excuse me? Alistair Devereaux leaned forward. His tone was clipped and cold. The house and the business are Devereaux family property. You married into this family, Elara. You did not, and you will not, own it. The only thing you are entitled to is the van. You should be grateful we're allowing you that. Mr. Abernathy frowned, shuffling papers. Alistair, the will is perfectly clear. The will is contestable, Alistair snapped. You want to drag this through the courts, Elara, pregnant, penniless, against our resources? Let's see how long your resolve lasts when you can't feed your son. The smell of stale coffee and Beatrice's perfume was nauseating. Leo's grip tightened. Elara saw the predatory gleam in their eyes. They wanted a fight, here, on their terms. She knew they would destroy her without a second thought. She closed her mouth and rose slowly. 15 minutes later she was standing. On the rain-slicked pavement, their laughter a faint, cruel echo. In her hand was a single, tarnished key. Her entire inheritance. As they walked toward the van, Leo kept looking up at her, waiting for her to say it was all a terrible mistake. But Elara remained silent, each step a leaden weight, carrying her into an uncertain future. She reached the van and ran a hand along its side. Flakes of orange rust came away like brittle parchment. It smelled of rain, old oil, and decay. This was all that was left. A strange, defiant thought took root in her stomach. Fine. If this is all you've left me, I will make it enough. The drizzle had thickened into a persistent mist. The van sat under the flickering glow of a leaning lamppost, looking like a beached metallic carcass. The driver's side door groaned open, releasing a stale breath of gasoline, damp wool, and forgotten journeys. Leo clambered in, his small fingers tracing the fissures in the cracked vinyl seat. Mom. His voice was a small whisper. We're not really going to live here, are we? Elara didn't answer. She slid into the driver's seat and placed the key in a grimy cup holder. On the dusty dashboard, she could see the faint smudges of Liam's fingerprints. A fresh wave of grief threatened to pull her under. She fought it back. Not now. That night, they found a secluded spot in a deserted parking lot. The hum of the nearby highway was a constant, impersonal lullaby. Elara wrapped Leo in the one blanket she'd managed to grab, tucking it around him until he was a small cocoon. She then lowered herself onto a narrow bench in the back. The shadows of two walkers passed by their windows, their words cruelly clear. "Is that the Devereaux widow?" "Yeah. Heard she got nothing. The family took it all. Always thought she was too proud. Guess she'll learn." Elara squeezed her eyes shut. Then a sharp, insistent kick from within her womb. A tiny, fierce reminder. You don't have time to break. The morning dawned grey and cold. She pulled on a worn sweater and watched Leo sleep, curled into a tight ball. She slipped out of the van, into the raw air. She had no home, no business, no savings. Just a rusted-out van and 2 children to protect. The days blurred into a rhythm of survival. Mornings began with day-old bread from a local bakery. Afternoons were spent scouring bulletin boards for any odd job, folding laundry, addressing envelopes, arranging flowers for a pittance. The van became their world. Leo drew stick-figure families on the fogged-up windows. To keep her mind from spiraling, Elara cleaned every inch of the van, trying to impose order on their chaos. It was during one of these cleaning sessions that her life pivoted. She was scrubbing a stubborn patch of rust on an interior panel near the rear wheel well. The sponge snagged. A large flake of rust and peeling paint broke away, revealing a sliver of metal underneath. But it wasn't the dull gray of steel. In the weak morning light, it shone with a soft, warm, dense luster. She frowned, leaning closer, and ran her thumb over the exposed strip. The metal felt smooth and heavy. Driven by curiosity, she pried at the edge of the paint. The sliver widened, into a patch the size of her palm. It caught a ray of sunlight, and for a heart-stopping moment, the gloomy van filled with a brilliant, unmistakable glow. It was the color of ancient treasure. Gold. Her breath caught. A memory of Liam surfaced, his voice echoing in her mind. "This old thing isn't a van, Elara. It's our nest egg." She had dismissed it as sentimentality. She pressed her palm flat against the panel. It was impossibly heavy. The realization dawned. The custom panels Liam had spent years fabricating weren't steel. They were solid gold, disguised under layers of cheap paint and chemically induced rust. She didn't scream. She didn't laugh. She carefully picked up the flakes of paint from the floor and gently cleaned the exposed gold. Then she covered it again with a loose floor mat. "Not yet," she whispered. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a secret, a weapon to be wielded with patience. Elara moved with quiet deliberation. One evening she worked for hours, carefully, prying loose a thin, unobtrusive strip from inside a door panel. The next day, she took a bus to a neighboring town, to a pawn shop with a discreet proprietor. He tested the metal, his eyebrows shooting up. He named a price that made Elara's head spin. She used it to rent a small garage, to buy Leo new shoes, to purchase prenatal vitamins, and to fill their cooler with fresh food. With the proceeds from a second piece, she rented a tiny stall in a bustling street market. With a few second-hand buckets and wholesale flowers, she began to do what she did best. Her hands moved with an innate grace, arranging bouquets for first dates, apologies, and remembrances. People noticed. "Who's the new florist?" Her arrangements are beautiful. "Isn't that the Devereaux widow?" The whispers were now fuel. She worked from sunrise to sunset, her daughter growing within her, a silent partner in her rebellion. Every spare dollar was reinvested. All the while, the van sat in its locked garage, its immense value hidden in plain sight. Across town, the empire the Devereaux had stolen was rotting. Without Elara's keen eye and Liam's warmth, petals and promises floundered. Alistair's arrogance and Beatrice's extravagance were poor substitutes for talent. Orders were missed. Suppliers went unpaid. Elara heard the gossip, but simply smiled and continued her work, the sweet scent of success masking her satisfaction. By the time Elara's daughter, Lily, was born, the market stall had blossomed into a sun-drenched corner shop. Painted in gold-leaf script across the window were the words, Leo and Lilies. Inside, the air was a fragrant paradise. Customers flocked to her, not just for the flowers, but for the calm, welcoming atmosphere she cultivated. The Devereaux' downfall was no longer a rumor, it was a headline. Devereaux Floral Dynasty files for bankruptcy. Elara read the article while nursing Lily, a sense of calm, cosmic balance settling over her. One crisp autumn afternoon, the bell above the shop door chimed. Alistair Devereaux stepped inside. He was thinner, his expensive suit now worn and too large. Beatrice trailed behind him, her face a mask of weary desperation. Elara, Alistair began, his voice a reedy version of its former boom. We've had some trouble. The house is gone, the business, everything. We need a place to stay, just for a while. Elara continued her work, carefully tucking a sprig of baby's breath among white roses. She didn't look up until she had tied the silk ribbon into a perfect bow. I remember, she said, her voice soft, but clear as glass. I remember the day you told me that a cold, rusted van was all I deserved, that my children and I were worth nothing more. She met their gaze. Her eyes held no malice, only the serene calm of a survivor. Beatrice's eyes darted around the thriving shop, landing on the gold leaf sign. A flicker of horrified understanding dawned in her eyes. Elara slid the finished bouquet across the counter. I'm afraid I don't have room, she said, her voice gentle but unyielding. Some foundations are built too small to carry the weight of those who once tried to shatter them. They left without another word, the chiming of the bell marking their final defeat. Elara exhaled slowly. It wasn't the bitter taste of revenge she savored. It was the sweet, profound taste of freedom. Evening sunlight streamed through the shop. Windows. Elara sat behind the counter, watching Lily sleep, while Leo sketched in a notebook. Through the window she could see the van, now parked in the alley behind the shop. It sat there, rusted and unassuming, a silent monument to her past. The gold had given her the means, but it was not the source of her success. Her strength had been forged in the cold nights, her resolve sharpened by their cruelty, her victory earned with her own two hands. She knew Liam had left her not a fortune, but a test of her spirit, and the one key they could never take away. When customers occasionally asked about the old rust bucket out back, she would simply smile. It's a reminder, she'd say. It's just part of the story. Because she had learned the most valuable lesson of all. True worth often hides in the most unlikely of places. And sometimes, the very people who laugh as they hand you what they believe is worthless have, in fact, just given you the key to everything.